This estate was never yours. The words landed like gravel. A gloved hand flicked my birthday envelope into a waste bin beside the lilies. The envelope was heavy, vellum, gold edge, my name in careful ink. I watched it vanish between floral foam and damp tissues. The church smelled of wax and winter coats. My father's photo on an easel, a brass stand, a guest book with a black ribbon. I kept my keys in my fist, a little ring of steel that said I still had a place to go. Someone laughed too loudly near the coffee urn. China rattled. I stood very still. If you have lived long enough, you learn that grief is quiet, humiliation is not. It likes an audience. My sister liked an audience most of all. She leaned in close. Perfume sharp as citrus cleaner. You heard me, she said, smiling for the cousins. He promised it to us. I swallowed. Looked at the will folder under her arm. Beige cardstock. A faint stamp from the clerk's office. I had not asked to hold it, asking had not helped much this year. Across the aisle, a cousin snapped a picture on a phone. The red record dot pulsed. You would think funerals calm people. Money kicks up the wind again. I should tell you who I am. At least on paper. My name is Avery Caldwell, 32. Child of Graham Caldwell, who believed in good suits, quiet breakfasts, and putting everything in writing. I am a parent. Two small voices call me home at night. I have a job that runs on spreadsheets and judgment. The lake house key is the weight in my pocket. The key to the city condo rides next to it like a lighter twin. But back then, standing by the lilies, I did not feel like anybody's parent or professional. I felt like a kid asked to leave the grown-ups table. My sister Corinne's cousin by marriage calls her a force like to rearrange chairs. Today she rearranged my future with a sentence. Here is the ugliness of it, the number they were fighting over. 10 million in combined real property and investments. That is what the lawyer had once said. Careful. Neutral. The lake house on 47 acres. The city townhouse with the copper gutters. The trust that spun off dividends like stubborn apples in October. They spoke about it like it was weather. As if rain just chose a roof and fell. I tucked my hands deeper into my coat. The program crinkled. Father's favorite hymn was underlined in pencil by someone who did not know his hand was steady and would never underline anything again. I thought of him by the water, pouring coffee from the dented thermos, saying what he always said about storms. Let the first gust go, then decide what to do. Say something. My sister hissed, still smiling for the room. She wanted a scene. I gave her silence. I looked at the bin where my envelope slid down. A little gold flash among white tissue. I looked at the beige folder. I looked at the cousins who wished this was a movie. Before we go farther, tell me something. Where are you watching from, and would you subscribe so you do not miss how this ends? Families and money are the same river. You do not know how deep until you step in. All right. Back to the aisle with the lilies and the brass stand. The choir began a soft prelude. People shifted. In grief, we play roles. I took my own. I picked the envelope out of the bin with 2 fingers. I brushed off a leaf. It was not vanity, it was information. Inside lay a small card my father wrote in September. A list of who to call about taxes. A stick. On tab. Marked January. He always left breadcrumbs. Corinne, 44. Forever rehearsing her entrance was not blood, but love to act like it. She moved like a person sure of the lighting. Beside her, my father's brother made a little bow of apology. His eyes said he hoped I would pretend not to notice what I noticed. Families ask you to be a magician, make the insult vanish, make the numbers appear. At the reception, the room softened. Coffee urns steamed, the deviled eggs sweated. Someone swore the casserole was Mother's recipe, though everybody knew Mother used more paprika. Corinne placed the will folder on a sideboard like a centerpiece. She tapped it with one perfect nail. We will go straight to the lawyer after the columbarium, she told the aunties, and raised her brows as if confiding in them about church flowers. I kept to the edges, I always do. That is the trick of being oldest and quiet people. Forget quiet is not the same as weak. I saw the man from father's firm near the door. He had a raincoat folded on his arm. His hair wet. His eyes clear. He gave me the small nod that says, "Later." I nodded back. Later is a loaded word at a funeral. If you want the first tremor. It happened by the coat rack. Corinne caught my sleeve. Leaned close. "Do not bring the children into any of this," she whispered. "They get excited, then they get loud. We are talking to adults." I felt the coat hanger dig under my palm, thin wire, easy to bend, sharp if you are not careful. She smiled for a deacon walking by. He called her gracious. She patted his arm like a hostess. Some stories have an honest villain. Ours has a chorus. My father's golf friend cornered me near the door and murmured how admirable it would be to keep the house in the family, which is a phrase people use when they mean in my calendar for summer. An aunt asked if the trust could cover her hip surgery because that is what family would want. A cousin wanted to know about the boat permit. I answered in little sentences. Yes. No. We will see. I felt the envelope in my pocket. I kept my keys. What they did not know, this part matters, is that the thing on the sideboard was not the only thing written. My father ran his life like a ledger. He never left one copy where a coffee ring could blot it. He also used his phone like a young man. He learned the cloud. He loved backups. I had learned the habit from him. Call it superstition. Call it survival. When people argue over houses, paper goes missing. But copies do not forget. Please do not get the wrong idea. I am not here to preach about prudence. I have failed at that enough. I once took a promise on faith and watched it go dark. I once said yes to a small request and woke up to a mountain of big ones. But grief changes what you carry. I carried keys, a card in my pocket, and one more thing under my tongue: patience. By the time we walked out to the columbarium, the sky had turned the color of old pewter. My father's name was already cut into stone, a clean serif, the year not yet carved to the last day. Corinne stood beside the priest, arranging people like place cards. My children held my hands and swung them. I told them a small, true thing: Granddad liked the loons at night. That is all a child needs to know at a wall of names. When it was done, when the umbrellas closed and the coats went on, I let Corinne shepherd the aunties toward the cars. She lifted the beige folder, flashed it toward me as if to say, "See?" I nodded as if to say, "Later." And then, just before I stepped into the rain, my phone buzzed. A message from a number labeled only with a last name and the word counsel. 7 words, calm, no exclamation points. He wrote, "We should speak alone. There is another. But I will tell you that part later. Tell me where you are watching from, and if you have ever seen good manners used like a blade. Leave a comment. We need to talk about families and money. They say a home is where the heart is. But sometimes, it's where the hurt begins." I bought that house in silence. No ribbon-cutting ceremony. No champagne toasts. Just me, my broker, and a set of keys that felt heavier than they should. It sat on the corner of Oak Ridge and Holloway. A modest 2-story with blue shutters and a porch that creaked with history. $1.5 That was the price tag, not just in money, but in years of quietly grinding while everyone else was celebrating promotions or planning destination weddings. Nobody in my family knew I'd been saving. I didn't broadcast my bonuses, nor did I wear labels that screamed success. I lived simply by choice, not necessity. My paychecks went into a trust account. Every coffee skipped. Every secondhand coat. Every holiday alone at the office. Those were all bricks in the foundation of that home. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially when walls start going up. It was my brother who first brought it up. Over Thanksgiving dinner, back when I still attended those, he leaned over his second plate of stuffing and said, "I heard from Mom, you've been looking at property. Got something in the suburbs?" His voice was casual, but his eyes weren't. I smiled, keeping it vague, just exploring. What I didn't say was that the house was already mine. Escrow had closed a week prior. I was sleeping on an air mattress in the master bedroom. surrounded by unopened boxes and unfamiliar silence. I was still figuring out how to fill that house not just with furniture, but with a feeling. When the truth finally came out, it wasn't because I told them. It was because someone saw a photo I'd posted, just one. A blurry shot of my porch with the caption, "New Beginnings." I forgot how closely people watch when they're waiting for something to resent. My mother called first. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. Like I'd committed a betrayal. That's not how family works. But family, in my experience, works in mysterious ways. A week later, the tone changed. "You know, your brother and Laura have been struggling," she said. "That business loan went south, and they're still paying off that private school tuition." I was thinking, if you sold the house, or even refinanced, it could really help them out. Help them out. As if the years I spent climbing out of my own debt were just a warm-up to catching theirs. As if my sacrifice was a communal down payment. I didn't respond right away. I told her I'd think about it, though I already knew my answer. And it wasn't the one she wanted. The pressure came next. Group texts about supporting each other. Subtle digs during Sunday calls. Must be nice to have that kind of freedom. Or not everyone's as lucky as you. Then, one day, a joint email titled "Proposal for Family Equity Redistribution." Yes, they actually called it that. Attached was a document suggesting I donate 50% of the home's value, $6 to a family trust. My name would be on the title. Sure. But for tax efficiency, my brother would be the manager of the trust. I read it twice before laughing out loud. It wasn't just the audacity, it was the legal tone. The false professionalism. As if masking manipulation with serif fonts and bullet points made it honorable. I declined. Of course. Politely. At first. Then firmly. Finally. When Laura cornered me at my niece's graduation party. Not so politely. "You know, it's not really about money," she said, swirling her drink. "It's about unity. About not hoarding what should be shared." I stared at her over the rim of my glass. "This house isn't a pie, Laura. There's nothing to slice." She smirked. "Funny. That's not how your mom sees it." That night, I left early. Not in anger, but in quiet resolve. Something had shifted. I wasn't part of the family circle anymore, I was the perimeter. The caution tape. The final straw came in the form of a birthday invitation. Mine. Sent by my brother. Apparently on behalf of everyone. Inviting the whole clan to my home for my celebration. Except, as I learned from the group chat screenshots later, the party was really about opening up the discussion again. About getting the house back on the table. I canceled the event without explanation. But what they didn't know was I'd already started recording. Conversations. Emails. Voicemails. Even that birthday invite, with its barely veiled agenda, was saved and backed up. Because, deep down, I understood this wasn't about one house. It was about control. And I was about to take it back. People remember birthdays for different reasons, some for the cake, others for the people who showed up. Me, I remember that year's birthday because of a metal trash can and a dining room table I nearly flipped over. The invitation had been sent without my knowledge, much less my consent. My brother. Jason, yes. The same one who had tried to write himself into my title deed had composed a cheery group message, surprise dinner for my name at their place. Let's celebrate and reconnect. He even added a little party hat emoji, as if that would soften the blow. At first, I considered letting it slide. Let them come. Let them eat my food and drink my wine and try once again to talk circles around me. But something inside me, a kernel of spite or maybe just long overdue clarity, refused. Instead, I leaned into the moment. I cleaned the house. I ordered catering, nothing fancy. Just enough to keep folks civil. I set out extra trash bags. Not for garbage, But for all the emotional mess I knew would be spilled, everyone arrived on time, which should have been my first red flag. My family is never on time. They saunter in, late and unbothered, unless there's something at stake. Jason and Laura were the first through the door, all smiles and empty hands. My mother followed, carrying a casserole dish she insisted had just a little something to contribute. I didn't ask what it was. I didn't care. The dinner started normal enough: roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, polite conversation. My niece showed me her college acceptance letter. My uncle talked about his golf swing. For a moment, it almost felt like family, until it didn't. About halfway through the meal, Laura cleared her throat. She always does this before saying something she thinks is profound. "I think now's a good time," she said, "to revisit a conversation that's important to all of us." I didn't blink, just kept chewing. Jason took the baton. "It's about the house and the future. We're a family, and families think long term." I set my fork down. "This again." My mother piped in. "You have something so stable, dear. We just want to make sure it supports everyone. Not just me." I finished for her. "Not just me." Laura leaned in. "Exactly. You've done well. That's something to be proud of. But this house, it could be a family asset. A base. Somewhere we can all rely on." "You mean somewhere you can leverage for loans?" I asked. Silence. Jason tried to laugh it off. "Come on. That's not fair." "No," I said, standing now. "What's not fair is pretending this is a birthday dinner when it's actually a pitch meeting for your second failed investment. What's not fair is using my roof, my table, my food to stage a coup." My voice wasn't loud, but it carried. The kind of quiet anger that makes people shift in their seats. "Let me tell you what this house really is," I said. "It's where I slept on floors and ate frozen dinners while you all went to Cabo and posted photos. It's where I worked 80-hour weeks and kept receipts in shoeboxes. You think it's a prize, a jackpot. But it's not. It's a monument to endurance, to every moment I said no when I wanted to say yes." Nobody spoke. "Now," I continued, "if you want a family base, I suggest starting with something simple like respect, or boundaries. Maybe even a conversation that doesn't involve your lawyer's template for a trust document." Laura stood. "You're being dramatic." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally just done being polite." I walked to the kitchen, pulled the party invite out of the drawer, and dropped it into the metal trash can. Then, I picked up the whole can and set it beside the dining room table. "If you brought more offers, more documents, more plans to guilt me out of what I've built, this is where they go." No one touched their wine after that. Plates were cleared in silence. My uncle patted my shoulder on the way out. "Mignet's mouthed." "Sorry." Jason didn't say goodbye. The next morning, I found Laura had posted a photo from the dinner. Just a shot of the table, empty plates, flickering candles with the caption, "Some people forget what family really means." It had over 100 likes. I didn't comment. I didn't call. I just opened a new folder on my desktop: evidence. Because what they still didn't understand, what they refused to learn, is that when you push someone too far, you don't just lose access to their property, you lose access to their silence. People say trust is earned. In my case, it was nearly stolen by blood, no less. It all began with a certified letter. I had just finished my morning coffee, scrolling through real estate listings out of habit, not intent when the envelope arrived. Thick, cream-colored, embossed return address from a law firm I didn't recognize. At first glance, I thought it might be some estate planner fishing for clients, until I opened it. "Dear, my name. This correspondence serves to inform you that your name has been proposed as a contingent trustee in the revised documentation for the Lexington Family Trust. I didn't read the rest. Not right away. Lexington Family Trust. I knew the name. It was my grandfather's legacy. Started back in the 1950s when he built a modest logistics company that ballooned into something large enough to spin off an entire trust fund originally meant to protect my grandmother and, later, help pay for the grandkids' education. That fund had been untouched for decades. My father died before he could manage it. My mother never wanted the responsibility, so it sat there, aging quietly until Jason and Laura got clever. I scanned further and found exactly what I feared. Jason had restructured the trust using a quiet clause, one that allowed for amendment if a majority of beneficiaries agreed. And since most of those beneficiaries were his immediate family, Laura, their kids, and a cousin he once bailed out of jail, they'd done it. They rewrote the trust to make themselves primary stewards of the money. But more than that, they added new terms. The family home, my home, would now be part of the trust's asset pool, under the condition that I agreed to serve as a contingent trustee. In other words, I could keep living in my house, as long as I let them take control of it. It was manipulation masquerading as a compliment, a trap wrapped in silk ribbon. I called the law firm. The assistant on the line sounded young, chipper. I asked how often people added privately owned property into family trust pools without consent. She stuttered. Put me on hold. Eventually, a partner came on, older voice. Serious. Miss, my name. Your brother's filing does not compel you to participate. Your signature would be required for any transfer of deed. Without that, nothing is enforceable. Good. I said, then tell him my answer is no. He paused. He mentioned you might be emotionally resistant. I'm not emotional. I said, I'm prepared. And I was. That night, I sat with every file I had: deeds, tax returns, insurance records. I scanned them into a new drive. Locked behind triple encryption, I called my own lawyer. Retainer paid in full. But it wasn't just about paperwork. Jason wasn't giving up. First came the social calls. Cousins who hadn't texted me in 5 years suddenly messaging, "Hey, we should catch up." Then came the guilt trips. Laura left a voicemail where she actually cried. "This is bigger than you," she said. "Think of what we could build. Together." Together. That word again. Like we were ever on equal footing. 1 week later, I received another envelope, this one unsealed. Hand-delivered. It was a proposed buyout clause, offering me $200,000 in exchange for voluntarily placing my property into the trust. A fraction of its market value. Not even a third. I laughed. Out loud. You see, by then, I had done my own digging. Turns out, Jason's second business had defaulted on a line of credit, a high-interest one. He was bleeding cash. And Laura's consultancy gig had dried up. They weren't trying to secure family wealth. They were trying to mortgage mine. And here's where it turns. I didn't confront them. Not directly. Instead, I forwarded the trust proposal and buyout documents to a friend of mine, a real estate journalist with a nose for legal gray zones and a sizable online following. She published a piece titled, "When Family Trusts Become Financial Weapons," featuring anonymized quotes from my documents, expert analysis, and a damning conclusion. The modern family trust, once a tool of preservation, is now a playground for manipulation. It went viral in niche circles, the kind where lawyers tweet, the kind where trust fund kids read comments and wonder if it's about them. A week later, Jason called me. His voice was sharp, panicked. "You aired our dirty laundry." He spat. "No," I said. "I put up a do not trespass sign. The fact you recognize the view is on you." There was silence on the line. Then he said something that stuck. "This house was never yours." I paused. "And that's why you'll never get it." Click. After that, things moved fast. The law firm withdrew their proposal. I received a formal apology, though I suspect it was more about liability than remorse. But more importantly, I learned something. Sometimes, the most powerful word you can say isn't yes, or even no. It's prove it. If you've ever stood in a lawyer's office, staring at a will while people you once called family glance sideways at you, like you're an intruder at your own funeral, then you know exactly what I felt that Tuesday morning. The air was stale. Leather-bound books lined the wall in neat, unread rows. Jason sat at the far end of the conference table, arms crossed like a CEO awaiting a quarterly report. Laura was beside him, hair sprayed into its usual shell, pretending to be gracious while her eyes scanned the room like a security camera. And then there was me, the eldest, the weird one, the one who, despite all their posturing, had managed to hold on to the one thing they couldn't seem to get: dignity. We were there because of my great-aunt Eleonora. She'd passed 2 months prior, peacefully, in her sleep. She was the last of my grandfather's siblings and the last true matriarch left in the family. Eleonora had never married, never had children. She wore chunky pearls and cursed at the television when political debates came on. She sent Christmas cards with actual glitter and had this knack for remembering birthdays, even for cousins she hadn't seen since the Carter administration. She was also, as it turned out, sitting on a fortune close to $3,400 in assets, from a mix of real estate, antique collection, and long-held stock in a southern textile firm that, miraculously, survived the 21st century intact. And she'd left a will, or at least, that's what we thought. The lawyer, a man with small round glasses and a look of quiet exhaustion, cleared his throat and began reading. Tomanietze. Laura. I leave my collection of crystal birds and the red settee from the Charleston house. Laura blinked, smiled politely. Jason's fingers drummed the table. To my great-nephew. Jason. I leave my first edition Hemingway set, and the painting of the magnolia tree, and to his children, my warmest love. Jason leaned forward, clearly expecting more. His mouth twitched. To my name. Here it came. I could feel the tension thicken like a bad rue. I leave nothing, because everything else has already been given. Silence. Laura let out a soft gasp. Jason looked stunned. My own stomach flipped. What? The lawyer continued. Please refer to Addendum B. He pulled out a separate envelope and handed it to me. Inside was a single-page document, signed, notarized, dated 4 months before Eleanor's passing. It was a transfer of ownership quiet. Legal. Binding of a property in Savannah. 2 rental units in Asheville. And a brokerage account holding stock valued just shy of $1,500, all transferred to me. Not in the will. In advance. Your great-aunt, the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses. Wanted to avoid a spectacle. Jason's face turned a shade of purple I'd never seen before. Laura sat rigid, like her corset was strangling her pride. She gave you everything. Jason spat. You manipulated her. You were never even close. I folded the addendum, placed it back in the envelope. I visited her every 3rd Thursday for the last 7 years. We played gin rummy. She beat me most weeks. You planned this, Laura hissed. No, I said. I showed up. That's the part they never understand, people like Jason and Laura. They think everything comes down to moves, to schemes, to orchestrated plays across some invisible chessboard. But most of life isn't strategy, it's presence. It's showing up when no one else bothers to. Eleonora didn't need a financial advisor. She needed someone to change light bulbs and listen to her stories. She wanted to laugh, to be seen, And I gave her that without asking for anything in return. The will wasn't a twist. It was a reflection. But that wasn't the real shock. The real shock came 2 days later when a voicemail hit my phone, an unknown number from someone at a retirement fund compliance office. Routine inquiry. They said, just checking on a withdrawal attempt flagged for potential fraud. Apparently, someone using Jason's business credentials tried to authorize a transfer from Eleonora's pension disbursement account dated 3 weeks before her death. The amount $2,600. I had the call recorded. Saved it. Sent it to my lawyer. Within a week, an investigation had opened. By the time it hit local news, the headline was impossible to ignore: prominent local family under scrutiny for pension fraud. Jason's face on the screen. Laura standing behind him. Tight-lipped. My phone buzzed for hours. Calls. Texts. Cousins asking what was going on. I said nothing. Not out of cruelty, but because silence, in the right moment, speaks louder than fury. Later that month, I held a small gathering at Eleonora's Savannah house. Just a few close friends. Some jazz records. A table full of lemon squares and sweet tea. I stood in her garden, the azaleas in bloom, and felt peace for the first time in years. Not because I'd won, but because I hadn't given up on kindness even when it felt like the world had. There's a peculiar silence that follows a storm, not the absence of sound, but something else entirely. A stillness so thick, it hums. That's how it felt in the weeks after everything came to light. Jason had gone quiet. Understandably so. The fraud investigation was ongoing. I'd heard through my lawyer that his accounts had been frozen, and a hearing date was on the horizon. Laura, ever the orchestrator of polite facades, had started telling mutual relatives that the entire thing was a misunderstanding, and that Jason was simply helping Eleonora sort through some financial matters. Of course, no one was buying it, not anymore. Funny thing is, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated, or smug, or powerful. What I felt was tired. Tired in a way only the truth can make you bone deep. Marrow-heavy tired. Like the body finally lets down its guard once justice knocks on the door. I didn't press charges. That part surprises some folks when I tell them, he tried to steal from your family. They say, he lied. He used your aunt. Yes, it did. And there's a record now. There are consequences in motion. But I didn't need to swing the hammer myself. Some revenge looks like headlines. Others, like distance. So I moved forward. I hired a property manager for the Savannah house and used part of the investment portfolio to start a community scholarship in Eleonora's name. Small awards, a few $1,000s each, for young women pursuing education in history, the arts, or caregiving fields Eleonora believed were always undervalued. The first time I met one of the recipients, a girl named Sierra with braces and a fire in her eyes, I could practically hear Eleonora's voice in the back of my mind. Make sure she spends it on books, not boys. I smiled. She's going to be just fine. The Asheville rentals continue to generate income. I didn't touch much of it. After years of living frugally, the sudden access to wealth felt odd. I took care of some repairs around my own home, replaced my rusted-out truck with something reliable. I even booked a long-postponed trip to Scotland, Eleonora's ancestral land. She always wanted to go but never did. I'll take her photo with me when I go. As for family, I didn't cut ties completely. I still send cards. I check on my cousin Maggie's health. When Uncle Ray's wife passed, I brought a casserole and sat quietly in the corner pew. But I don't go to reunions. I don't answer Laura's emails. And when Jason called once, long after the dust had settled, I let it ring. Some wounds aren't meant to bleed forever, but that doesn't mean they need to be reopened either. What I've come to understand, and maybe this is just the age talking, is that forgiveness doesn't always mean letting someone back into your life. Sometimes it just means choosing peace over bitterness. It means recognizing that people who betray often betray themselves long before they come for you. And you just happened to be standing in the light when they lost their way. In the end, Eleanor didn't leave me millions. She left me clarity. She left me with the lesson that love given freely is always returned. Somehow, even if it skips a generation, that showing up matters more than showing off. That revenge can be soft, graceful, quiet like a door closing without a slam. And that sometimes, the sweetest justice is a garden in bloom, a name on a scholarship check, and a life lived without apology. So if you've ever been the quiet one, the overlooked one, the one who was underestimated, I hope this story gives you something, not fire, not fury, just faith. That truth, when left alone, tends to find its way home. It may not come fast, but it always comes. Story 2, the best present. According to my daughter-in-law, would be for you to vanish from our family the day before my son's wedding. That's exactly what I did. They were shocked by what I left in the empty house after they had sold it and called off their ideal wedding. Amanda stood in my son's kitchen and said something that hit me like a slap across the face. Behind her, her wedding gown hung immaculately. The greatest present would be for you to vanish from our family. She grinned. I had come to despise that plastic smile forever. Without even glancing at me, Michael gave me a nod of agreement. Please let me know where you're viewing from and subscribe if you're watching this. First, let me provide some background. For me to know you're reading my story, I need your likes and comments. How did I end up here? I sold my lovely Victorian house, which my late husband Robert and I had painstakingly restored, 3 years ago to raise $87,000 for Michael and Amanda's down payment on their ideal home. With the unwavering love of a mother, my whole life savings passed over. They had assured me that I would always be welcome there, be a member of their family forever. Now, Amanda decided I was disposable the day before their lavish wedding, which I was funding. At last, Michael said in a chilly tone, "You heard her. Our special weekend is supposed to be this one. Everything is being ruined by your negativity." My negativity. I had helped with last-minute preparations in the afternoon, spent the morning arranging flowers, and listened to Amanda gripe about everything from the caterer to the weather in the evening. My only criticism was that perhaps swan-shaped ice sculptures weren't necessary. What exactly am I meant to do? My voice was eerily calm as I asked. Amanda looked at her manicured nails and shrugged. A hotel. I suppose. Your sister's, to be honest. Dorothy. As long as you're not here tomorrow. I don't care where you go. This is also my son's home. I reminded her. Michael actually cleared his throat. Now, more of it is Amanda's home. She has been in charge of all the money and has been improving things. You just once gave us some cash. Once. Some cash. 87元. Ling ling ling. Cut to a small amount of money once. I was standing in the kitchen, where I had prepared innumerable family meals. Selecting the custom cabinets that my money had enabled was made easier by looking at the granite countertop side. These people believed they deserved everything I had given them, so they took it all. Something changed inside of me at that point. Not broke. Changed into a new position like a gear clicking and oh. You're right, I muttered. I should leave? Amanda appeared taken aback. She most likely anticipated crying, begging for the typical dramatic she could later explain to her friends as Dorothy being challenging once more. I'll gather my belongings and leave in an hour. In fact, Michael appeared relieved. Mom, it's probably best that way. When things settle down after the honeymoon, we can talk. After the honeymoon, talk. As though the dispute over seating was merely a passing one, I ascended to the guest room where I had spent the previous 6 months. Not in my room. I was not permitted to use that term. Since visitors eventually depart, the guest room is always used. I could hear them downstairs already making plans to rearrange the room as I packed my clothes into my suitcase. Amanda intended to convert it into a studio for yoga. It would make a good office, Michael thought. That didn't occur to either of them. Perhaps they ought to feel guilty about evicting the woman who had enabled them to live the life they had always dreamed of. I stopped when I saw Robert's picture on the bedside table. He had never once made me feel unwelcome in my own house in our 43 years of marriage. To his image, I whispered, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'm not going to give up easily. I had to make phone calls first. Though, outside their house, sitting in my car, no, don't do that." Outside the house I had purchased with my money, I took out my phone and dialed the emergency number for my attorney. Since Robert's passing, Margaret Chen had been managing my affairs, and she had forewarned me of this precise situation. It's Saturday night. Dorothy, is everything okay, Margaret? Please pull the house's paperwork for me. Bye. Everything. A pause. Has anything happened between Amanda and Michael? I told her everything. Amanda's command. The treachery of Michael. The casual way. They dismissed my contribution as some money once. Margaret listened without interruption, though I could hear her typing furiously. Dorothy, I've been worried about this for months. The way they've been treating your investment as a gift rather than what it actually was. What exactly was it? By the way, one more pause. This time, longer. Don't you recall signing those other documents, the ones I demanded? After you voiced your worries regarding Amanda's spending patterns, my heart began to race. Tell me, Margaret, that you somehow kept me safe. Oh, sweetheart, it was not a gift of 87. Ling ling ling. It was a loan-in-law. And the deed bore your name. Amanda never signed the acknowledgement forms I sent her as a co-owner. According to the law, a third of that house is yours. I almost dropped the phone. Are you serious? Extremely serious. Amanda repeatedly neglected to sign the documents. And you never brought up the subject because you were too preoccupied with maintaining harmony within the family. However, you are listed as a co-borrower by the mortgage company. Your ownership stake is shown in the deed. Everything is fully enforceable and lawful. I could see Amanda showcasing her wedding gown to a video chat user through the kitchen window. Her mother, most likely. She was utterly unaware of the conversation that would alter her life, just stipulating wildly while laughing. Suppose, Margaret, that I wanted to sell my portion of the house. What would happen? You would have every right to compel a sale as a co-owner. First refusal would go to the other owners. They could, of course, buy you out at the going rate. The house is put up for sale, and the proceeds are divided based on ownership percentages if they are unable to pay to buy me out. As they celebrated their release from the controlling mother, I saw Michael emerge in the kitchen window and open a bottle of champagne. Definitely. Please draft a notice of intent to sell. Margaret, I want it delivered Monday morning at the latest. Are you certain about this? Dorothy, I've never been more certain of anything in my life once we begin this process. They want me to vanish. All right. However, I'm bringing my 35% with me. I hung up and watched my son and his fiancée toast their future in the home I'd made possible while it grew darker. They were unaware that their idyllic little world would fall apart in less than 48 hours. I needed to make one more call first. Though, Sunset Gardens Country Club. It's Jessica. Hello. Jessica. Dorothy Mitchell is this person. Regarding tomorrow's wedding reception, I must talk to your catering manager. How thrilling. Mrs. Mitchell, isn't the wedding tomorrow? How may I assist you? I regret to inform you that the plans have changed. I must call off the reception. Cancel, however. It's less than 24 hours away. Ma'am, the food is ready. The employees made a schedule. I am willing to pay the cancellation fees because I understand. The problem is that I am the one who made the deposit and signed the contract. I think I'm entitled to make adjustments. The sound of papers rustling. I'll check. Indeed, your name and credit card details are on the contract. However, you should definitely talk to the bride and groom first. Not necessary. An executive decision is what I'm making. With all due respect. Mrs. Mitchell, please cancel everything. It would seem that the happy couple should be involved in this. Now, for the 100th time today, I watched Amanda try on her veil through the window. The happy couple made it very apparent that they no longer wanted me to be involved in their lives. So I'm just doing what they asked me to do. After 20 minutes, I ordered room service, checked into the Hampton Inn across town, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. The fulfillment that comes from taking charge of my own life. When my phone rang at 1147 p.m. What did you do? I had to keep the phone away from my ear because Amanda's voice was so loud. I fulfilled your request, I said coolly as I turned off the television in my hotel room. I vanished because that's what you wanted. The country club made a call. You canceled our reception, they said. The reception for our wedding. Dorothy, tomorrow, dinner will be attended by 200 people. There must be. Indeed. That sounds like an issue. Michael reached for the telephone. This is crazy. Mom, because you are unhappy with the sleeping arrangements, you cannot simply call off our wedding. Your wedding was not called off by me. You can still get married. My love, I simply canceled the reception for which I had paid. The one I was spending $14. 000 on. You know, quiet. I had never before brought up the price. Avoiding questions about money at all costs. Allow me to be their giving mother, while blissfully oblivious to the sacrifices that were required. Circe. Ling ling ling. Amanda's voice had grown slender. The reception. The flowers. The band. The photographer. Did you believe that everything was free? Did you think that your decision to have a fairy tale wedding made money appear out of thin air? We can't tell 200 people. Though, no reception is in place. You resourceful adults. Michael stumbled. You'll find a solution. I'm sure. McDonald's now offers catering. 6 months ago, I might have felt bad about the ugly sobbing sounds I heard Amanda making. They now merely sounded like the outbursts she had been having ever since they became engaged. How could you harm us like this? We had faith in you. Believed in me. I literally heard you tell me to leave your family. I'm just doing what you asked me to do. Amanda cried. I didn't mean forever. All I intended was for the weekend. I understand. I was therefore meant to intuitively realize that you meant temporarily when you said permanently. It was my error. Michael tried something else. Please. Mom, we can discuss this like grown-ups. Let's resolve this when you get back to the house. The house that no longer accepts me. The house where everything is ruined by me. Not in my opinion. Even Zoe. Where are you staying? Amanda insisted. You don't really care about that anymore. Do you? You stated unequivocally that I am responsible for resolving my living situation. In the background, I could hear anxious murmuring. Most likely their attempts to undo the mess they had made. If nothing else, could you give the country club another call? Michael begged. Perhaps if you explain. There was a miscommunication. There was no miscommunication. The person who was footing the bill made a very obvious business decision. However, what about our visitors? What if Amanda's relatives arrive by plane from California? How about them? Are you still planning to get married? They can still see that. They simply won't receive a complimentary meal afterwards. Amanda retrieved the phone. You're being cruel and vindictive. No. Dear, telling the woman who has been supporting your ideal wedding to leave your family was cruel and vindictive. All I'm doing is being frugal. Everything will be ruined by this. Will appear to be broke to everyone. Now that you bring it up, I let that linger for a while observing their wriggling. Now that you bring it up, you are most likely going to run out of money very quickly without my help. That's something else we ought to talk about. What are you saying? Panic tightened Michael's voice. Right now. Really? Have you recently taken a look at your household budget? Are you aware of the difference between your monthly income and expenses I've been adding to your lifestyle in ways you probably haven't even realized? So more desperate whispering. The money for groceries. Amanda and I go shopping together. And since you're always a little short this month, I pay the utility bills online, the insurance premiums, the auto repairs, and the recurring minor crises. They were presents. Weekly. Amanda said. Were they? Since allowances can be stopped at any time, they appear more like an allowance from where I'm sitting. I thought they had hung up because the silence was so long. Michael finally said something. Mom, what do you want? Well, that was intriguing. They were eager to get rid of me an hour ago. They wanted to negotiate now. I want to permanently vanish from your family. Just like you offered. And when I leave, I want to bring my money. My phone had 41 text messages and 37 missed calls by Sunday morning. As a civilized person, I ignored them all while eating breakfast, ordering room service, and reading the Sunday paper. The wedding was set to take place at 2:00 p.m. 9 a.m. Through the crowd, someone knocked on the door of my hotel room. Michael appeared to have shared a bed with someone, as evidenced by his rumpled tuxedo shirt. Please. Mom, we must speak. I didn't invite him inside, but I did open the door. You ought to be preparing for your special day. Right, I need to talk to you about that. Desperate. His eyes were rimmed in red. It's Amanda's breakdown. She has locked herself in the restroom and is refusing to leave. Her mother has threatened to return to California by plane. The entire situation is collapsing. That's unfortunate to hear. I hope it works out for you. Figure it out. You ruined our wedding. Mom. No. Son. I stopped contributing financially to your wedding. There is a distinction. I allowed him to push past me and enter the room. People must occasionally be allowed to hang themselves by their own words. This is crazy. Over. How misunderstood the sleeping arrangements were. Take a seat. Michael? He obeyed because of something in my tone. I stood there, staring down at my 2-year-old son, who was beginning to realize that there were consequences to what he did. It has nothing to do with sleeping arrangements. Respect is at issue here. This has to do with thankfulness. This is about not viewing the person who enabled your way of life as an inconvenience, but as a fellow human being. Haven't we always been kind to you? How recently have you inquired about my life, hobbies, and emotions? How recently have you extended an invitation to me since you desired my presence? Not because you required my assistance. He parted his lips, then shut them again. I'll hold off. Uncomfortably. The silence stretched. How recently have you given someone a call just to chat? How recently did you remember my birthday without being reminded by Facebook? When did you last treat me like your mother rather than your private bank, Michael? That isn't fair. Is it? How much have I given you and Amanda in the last year? I'm not sure. For emergencies, a few thousand here and there. 3,000 yuan. Ling ling ling. His face turned pale. 3,000 yuan. 000 for emergencies and minimal assistance. And until we are able to stand again, that's $124. Ling ling ling. Michael. Plus the $87. 000 down payment for the house. More than the average person earns in 2 years. We always intended to reimburse you. Were you since Amanda has been looking for a new vehicle? You've been perusing European vacation packages. You two have never once mentioned repaying me. His head was in his hands as he sagged forward. Mom, what are you asking for from me? I want you to realize that I am not your ATM. I want you to realize that generosity and kindness are finite resources. Additionally, I want you to realize that if you treat someone poorly for an extended period of time, they will eventually stop caring about your issues. So you're ruining our wedding day as a form of punishment. Everything I had been feeling was validated by the casual cruelty in that statement, that my setting boundaries was punishment. No, Michael. By putting an end to the financial abuse pattern, I'm protecting myself. Abuse of money. That is absurd. Is it I've been conditioned by you to think that my worth to your family is solely financial? You've taught me to demand large sums of money in return for tokens of affection. You take everything I have to offer for granted. And you've made me feel bad for having needs and expectations. He had to look at me because I sat down across from him and leaned forward. Amanda informed me yesterday that the greatest present I could give your family would be to vanish forever. You also concurred with her. Considering everything I've done and given up, you agreed that I ought to vanish. It wasn't her intention. She did. Indeed. You did. Too. And what do you know, you will receive precisely what you requested. He glanced up abruptly. What does that signify? I grinned. It wasn't a pleasant smile either. It implies that you should now figure out how to support your own lifestyle. There's a good chance Amanda's parents are feeling giving. And since the home situation is going to get really complicated, you had better start looking at apartments. What are you discussing? I am speaking of the legal documents that you have never before bothered to read. I assisted you with that down payment, as did your father. The ones that allow me to share ownership of your priceless home. His face was entirely devoid of color. You're right. My love, I'm going to list your house for sale. And I own 35% of it. Michael looked at me as if I had just spoken in Greek. A portion of our house cannot be yours. We purchased it. I put down $87. Ling ling ling. And we lived there. Indeed. Did you believe that money simply vanished into thin air? Or, however, you claimed it was a gift. Though, you expressed a desire to assist us in getting started. Taking out my phone, I scrolled to last night's email from Margaret. It seems that my lawyer had a different perspective on how to safeguard my investment. Do you want the pertinent legal documents to be read to you? This isn't feasible. Something would have needed to be signed by Amanda. Amanda was expected to sign a document. She repeatedly neglected to give the papers back. In any case, Margaret retained them on file, either in fear or anger. Michael was trembling now. This was something you planned. This entire situation has been planned by you. Oh, darling, don't you think I would have finished this before I paid for your wedding if I had been organizing it? He seemed to be struck by the reality of that. I had just been told to vanish after spending $14,000 on a wedding for them. I would have canceled months ago if I had been plotting. What comes next? He spoke in a tiny voice. Defeated. You now have an option. At the current market value, you can purchase my 35% stake, or we can divide the money from the sale of the house. We are unable to pay to buy you out. Today, the house is valued at $300. Ling ling ling. Over 100. 000 is 35% of that. I'm confident in my math skills. I have money because of this. You two are also constantly broke. He winced. It's not. We have money. We simply have a lot of costs. Michael, you make $8,000 a month as a household. That's $2,400 for your mortgage payment alone. Add in groceries, utilities, credit card bills, auto payments, and Amanda's shopping habits. Additionally, each month you spend more than you earn. How are you aware of all of that since I've spent the last 3 years making up the difference? Do you believe that money was left under your pillow by the money fairy? The phone rang in the hotel room. As Michael sat there adjusting to his new reality, I responded, "This is Jessica from Sunset Gardens." "Mrs. Mitchell, the mother of the bride is on another line. She wants to know if today's reception will be held again. If you let us move forward, she promises to cover all expenses." I turned to face Michael, who was listening with eyes full of hope. "Jessica, that's really kind of her. But I'm afraid it won't be feasible. Please. Mom, Michael got going. To silence him, I raised a hand. You see, Jessica, I can't take money from other family members for an event I decided to postpone because of certain family dynamics at work. I get it. Do I need to inform Mrs. Hayworth that the cancellation is still in effect? Sure. Please. Additionally, Jessica, please send this hotel my last bill. For the inconvenience. I'll pay off everything I owe. I hung up and faced Michael once more. In order to keep your reception intact, Amanda's mother was prepared to spend $14. Ling ling ling. For months, she has been organizing this wedding. Half of her country club was invited. How kind of her. Regretfully, her daughter was unable to show civility toward the individual who initially covered all expenses. Michael took his phone out. I must give Amanda a call. We have to decide how to handle the house. Proceed. However, Michael, make sure your wife understands something when you discuss our new arrangement with her. He stopped dialing and looked up. The woman who left your house last night is not me. That woman did everything in her power to maintain harmony within the family. This woman is tired of being exploited. Will you actually make us sell our house? As a cop owner, I will exercise my legal rights. It is up to you what you do with that information. Without saying another word, I departed, most likely to break the worst news Amanda has ever received on what should have been the happiest day of her life. My phone rang once more 20 minutes later. Dorothy. Amanda was crying so much that her voice was hardly audible. We must speak. We really don't. My dear, yesterday, you made it very apparent that you had no interest in speaking with me. I was angry. The wedding was the source of my stress. I said something I didn't mean. You were upset. Of course. Pretending to put up with someone you clearly hate must be very taxing. Amanda. I don't hate you. I bought you this house. And it has been 3 years since you moved in. You've never expressed gratitude to me. Not once. You've never inquired about my hobbies, life, or health. I've never received an invitation from you unless you needed me to write a check, bring food, or watch the kids. That is untrue. How recently did you give me a call to check on me? Quiet. I'll spare your mind the trouble. Never. Never once have you called to see how I'm doing. However, you are Michael's mom. Your household? You told me yesterday that the greatest present I could give this family would be to vanish forever. You're calling me family today. Amanda. Which is it? More sobbing. Once, I would have hurried over with tissues and comfort when I heard that kind of frantic sobbing. Please. Dorothy, I'll do anything. I'll issue a public apology. I will. I'll reimburse you. How much money will you give me back? You're not employed. Do you recall you work as a full-time housewife in a home that would be unaffordable without my assistance? I'll find employment. What a fantastic idea. That's something you should do. However, it doesn't alter the house's current state. What if we decide to reimburse you for everything, all of the cash you've contributed to us over the years? It nearly made me laugh. You owe me $124. 000 at minimum wage. Amanda. Honey, earning that much would take roughly 6 years. If you never spend money on anything else, that is. The sound of reality finally setting in was the silence that ensued. They had made 16 more calls by 4 p.m. I hadn't responded to any of them. Rather, I was watching the local news coverage of a wedding disaster at Sunset Gardens while savoring a delicious late lunch in the hotel restaurant. Although the reporter didn't name anyone, it was fairly obvious from the video that Amanda was crying on the steps of the country club while wearing her wedding gown. I'm sorry, but you're Dorothy Mitchell. When I looked up, I saw a woman my age with kind eyes and well-groomed gray hair. Despite her familiar appearance, I was unable to identify her. I apologize. Are we acquainted? Hayworth. Barbara. Amanda's mom. She pointed to the vacant seat on the other side of me. Could I? This ought to be fascinating. With the refined poise of someone who had managed social crises for decades, Barbara took her seat. I wanted to express my gratitude. I hadn't anticipated that. I am grateful for revealing my daughter's true self. When the waitress showed up, Barbara placed her coffee order. I waited, wondering where this was headed. For years, I've been concerned about Amanda. Barbara went on. Her complete lack of appreciation for anything and the way she treats those she views as beneath her. I hoped marriage would help her grow up. And now I've witnessed her treatment of the woman who enabled her way of life. And I'm appalled. It was Barbara's coffee. She took a contemplative sip and went on. I volunteered to cover the cost of the reception. I felt sorry for the 200 guests who had been inconvenienced. Not because I agree with Amanda's actions, but I was right to say no. Wasn't I? My daughter had to take responsibility for her behavior. Actual repercussions. The kind that neither mommy's connections nor daddy's wealth can solve. I took a close look at Barbara. She was straightforward, which was refreshing. Because of the house situation, she called me hysterical. Barbara went on to insist that I lend the funds to purchase your portion, and I told her not to do that at all. She ought to have respected the co-owner if she had desired to own a home. A woman who embodies my values. Dorothy, may I ask you a question? What do you hope to achieve here? Do you intend to compel the sale? That's what I've been wondering. To be honest, I haven't made up my mind. There's a part of me that wants to see if they can truly manage without my financial assistance. Watching their idyllic little world fall apart makes me want to sell the house. And the other part remembers that, in spite of everything, Michael is still my son. Barbara gave a nod. I get it. Could I, however, offer some guidance from someone who has spent 39 years condoning her daughter's misbehavior? Don't spare them from this. Please, don't cushion the fall with whatever decision you make regarding the house. Because Amanda has never really been punished for mistreating others, I hardly recognize her as my daughter anymore. Then she took a business card out of her purse. Tomorrow, I will take a plane back to California. Give me a call if you ever want to speak with someone who knows what it's like to love a child who isn't grateful. Following Barbara's departure, I found myself sitting by myself with my thoughts in my phone, which continued to ring with messages that grew more urgent. In actuality, I was still undecided about my ultimate goal. I had been responding, defending myself, setting limits. Now, though, I had to determine what to do. The sale was being forced by the nuclear option. It would be necessary for Michael and Amanda to locate an apartment, most likely in a less appealing area of the city. At last, they would comprehend the significance of living within their financial means. Offering to sell them my share for less than market value was the benevolent course of action. What I'd really put in the house. Perhaps they might be able to keep their house, but they would still have difficulties. Holding onto my ownership stake indefinitely and collecting my portion of property taxes and improvements while watching them wriggle every month was the spied option. Sitting there, I considered my options. My phone rang once more. This time, it wasn't Amanda or Michael. This is Detective Rodriguez from the Virginia Beach Police Department. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm calling in reference to a financial elder abuse report that we received. My blood froze. I apologize. What someone called and said that family members have been taking advantage of you financially, and that cognitive decline may be affecting you. A welfare check is what they're asking for. Those cunning little serpents. I can tell you, Detective Rodriguez, that I have complete control over my mental abilities. I'm probably thinking more clearly now than I have in a long time. I'm glad to hear that. Ma'am, however, we must investigate these reports further. Is it possible for us to meet tomorrow morning? As I observed the regular people going about their daily lives in the hotel restaurant, I became extremely enraged at my son and daughter-in-law's most recent deception. Of course. Detective, I actually want to talk to you about a lot of things related to financial abuse. Not the type my family reported. Though, I grinned as I sat back in my chair after setting up the meeting. I was more than willing to take up the bat if Michael and Amanda wanted to play hardball. It's time to demonstrate to them what a true power play looks like. I was surprised to see how young Detective Rodriguez was. With sharp eyes and a patient manner that likely helped him in family conflicts, he was perhaps 40 years old. I brought my whole financial file with me when we met at the police station on Monday morning. I would like to begin by stating that the individual who called us appeared to be sincerely concerned about your well-being. Mrs. Mitchell. They certainly did. When it works for her, my daughter-in-law is very good at projecting concern. On his desk, I laid out my bank statements. I've given my son and his wife $124. 000 over the last 3 years. Detective, do you want to view the supporting documentation? He looked over the papers, raising his eyebrows. Check after check. Transfers via wire. On their behalf, credit card payments are made. A financial dependency pattern that resembled it exactly. This is significant, he stated cautiously. Yes, it is. They concluded that I must be mentally incompetent yesterday after I finally established some boundaries regarding their treatment of me. I took out my phone and listened to Amanda's 3 a.m. voicemail. This is crazy behavior. Dorothy, ordinary people don't ruin their families' lives because they feel hurt. We are concerned for you. Perhaps you should see someone who needs assistance. Michael believes you may be experiencing a breakdown. While listening, Detective Rodriguez made notes. Mrs. Mitchell. Is there a history of cognitive problems? Absolutely none. I drive myself, take care of my own house, and handle my own money. All that has changed is that I no longer allow them to exploit me. Margaret sent over the house documents, which I showed him. My attorney is able to confirm that I am a legitimate co-owner of their property. As an investor, I have the right to do anything I want. Preserving her possessions and calling off the wedding. I was funding a reception for those who advised me to permanently leave their family. I complied with their request. We spoke for 20 more minutes. Although thorough, Detective Rodriguez was fair. By the end, he appeared to be satisfied with my financial acumen and mental capacity. I will close this case as unfounded. Mrs. Mitchell. However, just in case, I would like to share some information with you regarding resources for elder financial abuse. In fact, Detective, I believe I have the situation under control at this point. My phone rang as I was leaving the police station. Michael, once more, the police called. Mom, according to them, they have decided not to pursue the welfare check. That's because, darling, I'm not the one being taken advantage of financially in this relationship. What is the intended meaning of that? It indicates that for years, you and Amanda have been methodically depleting my resources while treating me with contempt. My documentation piqued the detective's interest. A long silence. Are you putting us in danger? I'm telling you that your strategies of manipulation are no longer effective. Please. Mom, can't we just get together and discuss this like grown-ups, not at the house I co-own? But we can. And not until Amanda expresses regret for her actions. She apologizes. Has she been crying for the past 2 days? Because it sounded like she believes I have a mental illness based on the voicemail she left me at 3 this morning. She is not sorry. One more pause. Where would you like to meet tomorrow at 2:00 p.m. at Margaret Chen's office? Bring Amanda, along with a workable plan for dealing with the house situation. Azugestion Michael. I own 35% of a $300. 000 asset. My retirement security is that either we sell or you buy me out. You have those choices. I became aware that our dynamic had changed after I hung up. In years. For the first time, more than I needed anything from them. They needed something from me. It seemed like neutral territory in Margaret's legal office. All books are bound in leather and dark wood. Amanda and Michael appeared to have been fighting in the car as they arrived 15 minutes late. Amanda had lost all of her normal polish, and her eyes were red and swollen. She had obviously been crying for days, and I felt a little sorry for her. The other half recalled what she had said. Dorothy, the greatest present would be for you to vanish from our family. Amanda got started right away. You have my sincere apologies. I said things I didn't mean because I was anxious and overburdened. Thank you. That's a beginning. She appeared taken aback, as if she had anticipated my instant forgiveness. Across the conference table, Margaret laid out the house documents. Let's go over the facts again. Dorothy made the down payment of $87. Ling ling ling. She is listed as a co-borrower on the mortgage. Her ownership is listed as 35% in the deed. Michael looked at the papers as if they were going to change on their own. If Amanda had signed the acknowledgement forms, we would not have known how much ownership you would have. Margaret answered briskly. I sent them 3 times. Every week for 3 years. Amanda said. I was busy with wedding planning. Margaret sounded wonderfully doubtful. I gave them a chance to wriggle before I spoke. How we proceed is the question at hand. I've got a suggestion. Both of them bent forward. Hopefully. First option. At the current market value of $105. Ling ling ling. You purchase mit 35% stake. Amanda's expression turned pale. That type of money is not available to us. Choice number 2. In accordance with ownership percentages, we divided the proceeds after listing the house for sale. We would need to relocate. Michael spoke softly. You would, indeed, to a price you can truly afford. How about the third option? Desperately, Amanda asked. Option 3 does not exist. You have those options. Margaret took a calculator out. After closing costs and realtor fees, you would likely need about $270 if you sold the house today. About $95,000 would be Dorothy's share. Finding new housing would cost you $175. That's insufficient for anything respectable. Amanda objected. I said, it's enough for a small house in another neighborhood or a nice apartment. People with your actual income should live in the kind of place you know. Michael combed his hair with his hands. Is there any chance we could arrange a payment schedule? Mom, until we buy out your share, we might be able to pay you every month. This was what I had been waiting for. At what time? What collateral and what interest rate? You've already shown that you don't keep your end of the bargain. It's unfair. Is it not? You never meant to pay back the $37? 0 inches emergency loans you owe me. Why should I give you an additional $100? 000. Amanda broke down once more. Our lives will be ruined by this. No, Amanda. You will have to live within your means as a result of this. In your adult life, for the first time, however, what about our credit? How about our image, honey? I nearly laughed at your credit. You already have bad credit. For months, you have been placed on all of the bills. I've been helping you out. So I know. Margaret cleared her throat. I must inform you that Dorothy is fully within her legal rights to compel a sale. By providing these choices, she's being more than kind. How much time do we have to make a choice? Michael inquired. 30 days. I said, you should have enough time to look into your financing options after that. We were getting ready to depart. Amanda took hold of my arm. Please, Dorothy, we are family, even though I know I hurt you. That should count for something. Doesn't it? I briefly glanced at her hand on my arm before turning to face her. Behind the entitled exterior, I saw the terrified young lady. Amanda, family should be taken into consideration. The point is precisely that, just 2 weeks into their 30-day deadline, I received an unforeseen guest. Barbara Hayworth had a bottle of wine and a determined look on her face as she stood on the door of my hotel room. I hope it's okay if I stop by. Margaret Chen gave me the information about your hotel. Curious as to why Amanda's mother had returned to Virginia, I invited her inside. I came to see how the kids were doing. Barbara sat down in the only armchair in the room and said, "I want to talk to you." "How are they doing?" "Horrible. Amanda suffers from panic attacks every day. Michael is putting in extra hours at work in an attempt to find solitude. They are always fighting." I filled our glasses with wine. I was taken aback to discover that I was not as satisfied by their suffering as I had anticipated. "Barbara, do you want me to change my mind?" "Well, no. To tell you about Amanda's father. I'm here." I hadn't anticipated that. "Our daughter was completely spoiled by Richard," Barbara went on. "Each outburst was rewarded. Every repercussion was mitigated. Everyone else was to blame for every failure." She took a contemplative sip of her wine. "Amanda drove while intoxicated and totaled her car when she was 16. Richard hired the best attorney money could buy and had the charges dropped rather than letting her deal with the legal repercussions." "You're telling me this. But why?" "Because I've seen my daughter change into someone I'm not. And I finally come to the realization that more money or rescue won't solve her problems." Reaching into her purse, Barbara took out a check. "I'm giving this to you at Amanda's request. The amount is $25. Ling ling ling. Which is a good faith payment for the purchase of your share." I didn't touch the check. But I did look at it. "What did you say to her?" I informed her that I would no longer support her. "The check is a representation of Richard's life insurance. I was saving money for her inheritance. But I knew that giving it to her would only make things worse. The check was torn in two by her. That's a lot of money. Barbara, Amanda doesn't deserve and hasn't earned this money. I want you to know that you have my support no matter what you decide to do with the house. Dorothy, even in the event that their house is taken away, perhaps having to start over will teach Amanda the true meaning of gratitude and hard work." I sat by myself thinking after Barbara left. I had been Amanda's enabler for 3 years. Just as much as her parents had been. I had been teaching them that there would always be someone to catch them when they fell. And I had done so each time I wrote a check to make up the difference. What kind of lesson did I want them to take away from this? Michael texted me. And my phone buzzed. "Mom, a home equity loan that would pay $60. 000 toward buying you out has been approved for us. Can we arrange a meeting to talk about making partial payments for the remaining amount?" I spent a lot of time looking at the message. For the first time in years, they were making an effort. However, a home equity loan meant taking on more debt and failing to learn how to live a responsible life. I returned the type. "I want to see a comprehensive household budget and a practical plan for paying off all of your debts. Not just mine. But we can talk about it." He responded right away. "Mom, you can have anything you want. All we want to do is put this right." For the first time since the beginning of this whole thing, it sounded like advancement. The meeting on the budget was instructive. The worst way possible. In a sense, Michael and Amanda were acceptable when they strewn their financial records all over Margaret's conference table like proof of a crime. I said, looking over their monthly spending. "Every month, you spend $400 on dining out. Both of us put in a lot of overtime." Amanda said defensively, "We were too exhausted to cook at times." "Amanda, you don't work at all. Michael puts in a lot of work." After all, I went down the list. Amanda's clothing budget is $300 per month. I have to present myself professionally at social gatherings. Which social gatherings? You're unemployed. Even though Amanda's face was flushing, I persisted. $200 on streaming services and premium cable. You may use Amanda's gym membership twice a month. And it costs $150. Credit card minimums of $800 per month for what seems to be vacation and shopping debt. Michael was using his phone's calculator to add numbers. I know it looks awful. "Mom, when you bring home 8,000 per month, it appears that you're living a lifestyle that requires roughly 12,000. However, we could pay off the credit cards and drastically lower our monthly expenses with the help of the home equity loan. Hopefully," Amanda said. Margaret was taking notes with a detached, professional demeanor when I glanced at her. You would be taking out a loan against the house to settle your credit card debt. Amanda, what occurs if you use your credit cards once more? We won't. Our lesson has been learned. Have you, because this budget doesn't seem to have any major changes? You continue to eat out frequently, still keeping up pricey memberships that you hardly ever use, still in treatment, shopping as a pastime. Michael bent over. What would you want to see? Mom, what would convince you that we're serious about changing? Finally, the right question. I want to see a budget that reflects your actual income. I want to see you cooking at home, canceling unnecessary subscriptions, and Amanda getting a job. A job? Amanda looked horrified. Yes, a job. You're 39 years old with a college degree. There's no reason you can't contribute to the household income. But Michael makes good money. Not good enough. Apparently. Since you've been supplementing it with my money for 3 years. Margaret cleared her throat. Dorothy, what exactly are you proposing? I'd been thinking about this for days. Here's my offer. You can buy out my share for $75,000 instead of the full market value of $105. But there are conditions. They both perked up. First, Amanda gets a job within 60 days and maintains it for at least 2 years. Second, you sell one of your cars and use the proceeds to pay down debt. Third, you stick to a realistic budget with no restaurant meals, no unnecessary shopping, and no new debt. For 2 years. How would you monitor that? Michael asked. Monthly financial check-ins with Margaret. You provide bank statements, credit reports, and proof of income. If you violate any of the conditions, the full amount becomes due immediately. Amanda was shaking her head. That's like being in financial prison. No, Amanda, that's called being accountable for your choices. They asked for time to discuss it privately while they huddled in the hallway. Margaret turned to me. This is either very generous or very cruel. I can't decide which. Maybe it's both. When they came back, Michael spoke for both of them. We accept your terms. All of them, Amanda confirmed. Though she looked like she was swallowing poison, Margaret started drafting the agreement. I'll need this notarized and filed with the county recorder's office as we finalize the paperwork. I watched my son and daughter-in-law sign away their financial freedom for the next 2 years. Part of me felt victorious. Part of me felt sad that it had come to this. But mostly I felt like I was finally teaching them a lesson their parents should have taught them decades ago. Actions have consequences. And family isn't a free pass to treat people badly. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment. A lovely 2-bedroom place in a senior community with a pool and walking trails. When Amanda called with surprising news, Dorothy, I got the promotion. Amanda had started working as a receptionist at a dental office. And apparently she'd been good enough at it to move up to office manager. That's wonderful, honey. How do you feel? Exhausted? She laughed. And it was the first genuine laugh I'd heard from her in years. But also proud. I never knew I was good at organizing things. You always were. You just never had to use those skills before. There was a pause. Dorothy, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the panicked one from Margaret's office. I'm listening. I was horrible to you. For years. I treated you like an ATM and then got angry when you had feelings about it. I told myself you were just being dramatic. But the truth is, I was entitled and cruel. I sat down my coffee cup, surprised by how much her words affected me. What changed your mind, having to work for money instead of just asking for it? Realizing how hard it is to save even $100 when you're paying your own bills. Understanding what you sacrifice to help us. And Michael, he's getting there. He still thinks you were too harsh. But he admits we needed to change. Through my window, I could see other residents working in the community garden. I'd signed up to help with the spring planting next week. How are things between you two? Better. Actually, we're talking more now that we're not constantly stressed about money. We cook together. We take walks instead of going shopping. It's nice. I'm glad. Dorothy. Would you like to come to dinner sometime? Nothing fancy. Just homemade spaghetti and maybe some conversation that isn't about money. I thought about it. The old Dorothy would have said yes immediately, desperate to restore the relationship. The new Dorothy had learned to protect her boundaries. I'd like that. But let's start with lunch in a public place. Baby steps, of course. Whatever you're comfortable with. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a while, processing how different this conversation had felt from all the others. Amanda had sounded like an adult taking responsibility for her actions, not a child making excuses. Maybe the lesson had finally taken. My phone buzzed with a text from Barbara Hayworth. Heard about Amanda's promotion. Thank you for not giving up on her. I texted back. Thank you for not bailing her out. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their choices. Sometimes love means saying no. And sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the opportunity to discover who they really are. When no one's there to catch them. I'd spent 3 years being their safety net. And in doing so, I'd robbed them of the chance to develop their own strength. When I finally pulled that net away, they'd learned to fly. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And maybe that was the most valuable lesson of all. Outside my window, the sun was setting over the walking trail where I'd signed up for a seniors hiking group. Tomorrow I was having lunch with a man named Frank who'd asked me out after we'd both laughed at the same joke during last week's book club meeting. At 68, I was finally learning what it felt like to be valued for who I was, not what I could provide. And that was worth more than all the money I'd ever given away. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.